Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joined us. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Olga Atamanova, and today is day 266 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor. And I want to thank everybody, all the representatives of the media who tell the world the truth about this world. Our brief schedule for today is as follows. At 1 o'clock, joining us will be Roman Vashchuk, Business Commissioner, and we will talk about the changes of trends of business cooperation with Business Commissioner during the war and what tools are available for the protection of rights of businesses. At 2 o'clock, Yaroslav Shenko will join us. He's Deputy Head of Juvenile Prevention Directorate of the National Police, and we will talk about the children afflicted by war. Joining us right now is Fedir Venislavskyi, People's Deputy of Ukraine, member of the Parliamentary Committee of National Security, Defense and Intelligence, representative of the Verkhovna Rada, representative of the President in Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Good morning, Mr. Fedir. Good morning. Let's start our conversation with the United Nations resolution adopted recently as to the payment of reparations by Russia to Ukraine. So that the subject is vast, and we understand that there should be more further steps taken. How will this resolution work? What does it tell us about, and what are the tools to implement the resolution in terms of arrest of Russian assets? Thank you for your question. That subject is very interesting. I want to remind you that almost from the first day of war, we initiated creation of different international platforms to have Russia liable for the crimes against humanity, for the genocide committed by Russia against Ukraine, and yesterday's resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, taken during the 11th meeting, is one of the fundamental components of our systemic activity in terms of bringing Russia to liability and to creation of the balanced legal mechanism to compensate the damages inflicted by Russia from the very first day, and which it still continues to inflict by their strikes on the objects of critical infrastructure, using its terroristic methods of war used by Russian Federation. Talking about the yesterday's resolution, to say that it already created the mechanism which would allow us to confiscate assets in our benefit, which were frozen in Europe and all over the world. Unfortunately, it's a little bit early to say that. The resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, just like all other resolutions, they have their recommendation nature, but it's a clear signal of the highest level, on the highest legal international level, that Russian Federation will be liable to pay reparations for the damage it inflicted to Ukraine. Even watching the propaganda channels of Russian Federation, they are very tense. They understand that Ukraine already stepped on the clear and steady way of bringing Russia to liability, and it's not about the enforcement of certain assets, because some experts said that the Russian assets frozen are just some liabilities in front of international organizations or other subjects of international law. It's not just money, but the fact of the resolution itself, and that these issues started being discussed in Russian Federation, tells us, as well as representative in United Nations, Sergei Kislisa, he clearly stated the key messages, and the key task of this resolution is to bring the international criminal to liability for the crimes committed against Ukraine, Ukrainian sovereignty, Ukrainian people. Mr. Fedir, international experience tells us that after our victory, some steps should be taken, like first of all, to have Russia recognize they lost the war, and the second step is payment of reparations, which can be forcible or voluntary. It's obvious for all of us that Russia will pay the reparations in voluntary manner. So the first question as to such payment, from which assets we will be paid, and how soon this mechanism can start working. Unlike Russian Federation, the regime in which on the level of many European countries is recognized as terroristic, which does not comply with any international regulations and international laws. Us, Ukraine, and our international partners are within the international legal field, which regulate the enforcement of liabilities. And in compliance with the Statute of the United Nations, Ukraine conducts defensive war, within which we have damage inflicted on us, and even based on the resolutions of the General Assembly of United Nations, we have all reasons to assert that on the level of international laws, Russia will be recognized as aggressor who committed number of crimes, of international crimes against our country. And a part of international legal proceedings will be the enforcement of liabilities inflicted by Russia to Ukrainian businesses, individuals, civilians, government, and these damages should be indemnified. At what cost? I can remind you, from the start of the military campaign against Ukraine, the vast majority of international assets of the Russian Federation were frozen, and now we're talking about the legal mechanism which will allow us, in compliance with the international law, to enforce those liabilities on those assets. So we're talking about the international assets in the European countries, in the United States, in Ukraine. All of them will be apparently used as the source for funds to be compensated within those reparations for the damages inflicted to Ukraine. We work on international mechanism, and I'm sure that after adoption of yesterday's resolution, there will be a new impulse, and the concrete legal mechanism will be offered shortly. Regarding our actions after the victory, will we demand Russia to review the official decision, official resolution of our territories? Will we demand them to refuse what they're calling now their territory, but which in fact is our legally ours? This question is quite obvious for me. Now, no resolution of the criminal government, the terroristic regime of Russian Federation, related to the attempts of illegal annexation of other countries, in our case Ukraine, they have no legal force, they are legally void. So demanding it from Russia by results of victory, it's not worth it, and I'm convinced, moreover, that political elite of the Russian Federation that will replace current criminal regime, they will be forced to bring their legislation in compliance with the international law, international standards, principles, and norms, and as well as values of international law, because analyzing the resolution of the Constitutional Court of the Russian Federation of the within last years, there is complete neglect of the international laws in those resolutions, and Nebenza talking to United Nations refers to international law when it's for their benefit, and they never remember the fact that Russia infringed a number of international laws by annexation of Ukrainian territories and killing Ukrainian people, committing war crimes. So it should be replaced with a new law which would comply with international norms. Another question as to the occupied territories, including Kherson. We're all happy about liberation of Kherson and the right bank of the Kherson region. But talking about government authorities there, municipal government, who will fulfill those obligations and how soon we will be ready to bring our sovereignty there? Well, first of all, the military governor of Kherson region, he continues fulfilling his duties, even no matter the occupation of the vast part of the Kherson region. He will continue fulfilling his duties from the regional center, Mr. Kherson, also in the liberated territories which are being occupied by our armed forces and other sectors of the defense and other troops within the resistance forces. The central government transfers more authorities to the local governments, where they cannot function to the full extent because of the situation related to the war. And Parliament will adopt a number of resolutions by the initiative of the President as to creation of new military administrations, new offices, and local authorities, so that they could fulfill their duties in efficient manner in the deoccupied territories. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Olga Yudina, Ukrinform. First, about Poland. Poland officially recognized that the rockets which fell in their territory are of Russian manufacture. Can you please tell us what can be the consequences for Russia in this regard? I cannot be over-optimistic that the articles of the Statute of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the collective defense, will be put in effect, which will mean that they should enter the war against Russian Federation. But I think that we will see the increase in sanction pressure on the Russian Federation, and maybe provision to Ukraine of the most up-to-date systems of the air defense, which even hypothetically can make it impossible to witness incidents like we witnessed yesterday in the territory of Poland. But I don't think that we will see any military actions. And thank you, sir. Another question regarding Rammstein. What can we expect from today's Rammstein? Thank you for this question. Yesterday, the parliamentary committee, during the parliamentary committee meeting, we communicated with Minister of Defense Reznikov about Rammstein, which will be held online, and we expect that after yesterday's attacks, which was one of the most massive attacks on the territory of Ukraine, and referring to your previous question about the rockets fallen in Poland, it will add more confidence and more resolution to the ministers of defense of our partners as to provision of Ukraine with the weapons which will allow us to protect Ukrainian territory in more efficient manner and to prevent the terroristic attacks of Russian Federation using UAVs and ballistic missiles. Thank you for joining us, dear colleagues. I will remind you, we had Fedir Venislavskyi joining us, People's Deputy and representative of the President of Ukraine in the Parliament. Our next briefing is at 13 o'clock, and we will have Roman Vashuk joining us, his business commissioner, and we'll talk about the problems of business. Let's work on our victory and bear with us.